Hello my fellow weirdos, welcome back to my channel. For today's video we are doing a book versus movie for I Am Thinking of Ending Things by Charlie Kaufman. So the book I'm Thinking of Ending Things I watched before I watched the Netflix original adaptation, and I think that's important to remember because sometimes I do think the order in which you tackle these things can influence what you like better. What we're going to do today is we're going to discuss the main key differences between the book and the Netflix adaptation and what I thought about the changes that they chose to make, the things that they chose to keep the same, whether it worked or not, and overall what I thought of each of them. So we're going to go through this a bit of a step at a time. I've got my notes here that I typed as I was watching it on Netflix. So if you're unfamiliar with the book, it takes place primarily in a car. We have the main character who the entirety of the book is inside her head, and she is basically thinking about how she's thinking of ending things with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend is driving the car. They are driving through a very rural area to go to his parents' house, and she is meeting his parents for the first time. They've been in a relationship for a few months, but she's thinking of ending the relationship. And it is basically her thoughts, their conversation. Then some of it takes place at the house of the parents and a Dairy Queen locally, and then it ends at a nearby high school, the boyfriend's high school. And I was intrigued to see how an adaptation was done because, like I said, the book is all her thoughts. And that can be very difficult to portray on screen sometimes. Obviously you have the narrator voiceover, which was what they've gone for, but it's still hard to take what can be written down and put in a book and easily read and understood and enjoyed, and translating that to film, because it's not necessarily going to translate well. It might come off almost like they're just reading the book to you, and that isn't going to work. Also, the book is quite surreal and strange, and I was intrigued to see how they took that aspect of it and put it on film, because it's not a straightforward story. It sounds very straightforward, you know, a girl going on a road trip to meet her boyfriend's parents who's having doubts about their relationship. It sounds very straightforward, but it is very, very, very much not all that it seems. Now, before we get into this, guys, needless to say, there will be spoilers. There's gonna be spoilers for the book and the Netflix adaptation. So don't listen to this and then whine at the end when I'm like, oh, you spoiled it for me. We're talking about the differences between them, so I'm going to be revealing what happens in both. Okay? So, first of all, one of the biggest differences between the book and the movie is the intermittent story. So in the book, we have two alternating points of view. We have the girlfriend inside her head thinking about this guy while she's on the road trip. And then we have chapters where we have staff at a high school somewhere discussing a tragedy, something that has happened to one of the staff members, something that the staff member did to themselves, why it happened, how it happened, the detail of it, how it's impacted them in the school. They are having a conversation about an incident that we are not yet privy to knowing how it links to our girlfriend and boyfriend inside the car. In the movie, instead of having the staff discussing the member of staff who was the janitor and what happened to him and revealing through their conversations how the two stories link, we had a camera literally just splitting time between the boyfriend and girlfriend inside the car and their road trip and the janitor himself at the school. And it was just as strange in the book and in the movie, because you do come to those chapters in the book and you can't really understand what the connection is, and you're trying to guess what the connection is. So they did that very well with the movie, but I did prefer the staff members discussing it because they were able to give small pieces of information, little pieces of the puzzle, and you were able to put that together with your story with the boyfriend and girlfriend and maybe see where things were going. Whereas in the movie, you literally just have this janitor walking about doing his job, and there is no way of knowing how they're connected until at the very end, and that's if you can work it out at the end of the movie, and I'll explain that afterwards. What I'm trying to say is the way that the book did it is clearer, which is easier said than done in a book when you're talking about something that's quite surreal. But it is clearer from the staff discussing what you're dealing with, what the situation was, what happened to the janitor, and then slowly over the chapters how it's linked to our couple. Whereas this, it's just a janitor walking about, janitor doing some cleaning, janitor in a school. You don't really understand. And there's no kind of little tidbits for you to pick up on. So I find that, I think I would have preferred it the same as the book personally. The film has gone for a much more dreamlike quality. Now, I did say that it was surreal and the book is surreal, but the book is surreal in an incredibly unsettling and unnerving way. When you're reading the book, things aren't right, and you almost can't put your finger on what is wrong. You just know that what you're reading doesn't make sense. It's not normal. It's not the situation that it seems to be. And the entirety of when you're reading this book, which is a very quick read, I read it in one sitting, couldn't put it down to be honest. You find it very unsettling, unnerving. You just know there's something not right and you want to find out what that is. The movie has some like unsettling moments from the book, but they have gone for a much more dreamlike quality to the entire experience. So it doesn't seem as unnerving or unsettling because it's clearly not reality. Does that make sense? The book could be reality. The book could be reality, but something's very wrong and you're trying to work out what it is. Whereas the movie, it's obvious that it isn't reality because it is so strange and dreamlike, and it has this quality of, you know, when you're almost in a dream and you know you're in a dream, like that. So the book to me came off a lot creepier, which is what I prefer. When you're watching the movie, you have, for example, the parents, they get really old. They get older and older and older, and then they get younger again suddenly. You have the family dog appearing, disappearing. You have the house layout constantly changing, and the family's history is kind of played out before you on the screen. So it feels very much like it's someone's memories and dreams put onto the screen for you. Whereas in the book, the entire time you do think that this girl is at dinner with these parents, which turns out they're not. Spoiler. So it could be grounded in reality, but with something being wrong with reality. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So that made it much more creepy, much more unsettling, that there was a situation that was playing out and it could be very strange and wrong and weird and there's just something not right. Whereas this is very clearly like inside someone's head, basically, which is what, of course, it turns out to be in both cases. So essentially, again, you should have already seen this and you should have read the book, but the entire storyline is inside the head of the janitor. The janitor is playing out a scenario. He has grown old and buried his parents and is alone. And he's just grown old being a janitor at the school and he's never had a relationship. And he thinks back to a girl that he met in a bar at university and imagines what it would have been like if he had spoken to her. Maybe they would have gone and met his parents. The whole thing is him kind of playing out this imaginary scenario for him to work through his own issues and his own loneliness so that he can build up to the conclusion, which is him committing suicide. And you're slowly come to the realization when you're reading the book that the girlfriend does not exist. That's a character inside his head. The parents are long since dead. Those are now memories inside his head. The younger version of himself is just an imagined version of his reality, and that's why none of it makes any real sense, and it all comes to this big head at the high school at the end. The movie, though, it's very clear from the beginning that the mum and the dad aren't real people. They, like I said, they age and then they become young again, and they're clearly playing out memories of the boyfriend's character, so they can't be real. They do have similar clues. One of the clues that the girlfriend doesn't exist is the fact that she sees a family a photograph, a wall of family photographs, and one of the photographs is a little kid, and she asks her boyfriend, who's that kid? And he says, well, it's me, obviously. And she's like, no, that's me. And she's convinced that this is a photograph of her when she was a child, that they're saying is in fact him. So that's one of the clues that you get in the book, but it's that kind of sort of subtleness to it, whereas in the movie it's very clear that she isn't who she's supposed to be. And I think that kind of took away from a lot of the creepy, unsettling nature. Throughout the book, she receives a phone call from herself. It's her own name and number coming up on the phone, and they repeat the same message over and over again, saying that, you have to come to the, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's like, you have to come to the conclusion, that you have to come to the end of this. That is clearly representing the protagonist, the actual character, the janitor's thoughts about committing suicide. It plays a much more prominent role in the book. It's only mentioned a couple of times in the movie, and it doesn't really seem to have the same level of importance. They just keep saying in the phone call that there is a question that needs answered, but it doesn't really feature. He mentions it once, whereas in the book you hear it repeated multiple times. And the question being answered is whether basically to commit suicide, unfortunately for this man. Then there is the high school situation at the end. So our boyfriend and girlfriend end up at a high school, which is the young man's high school. They start to kiss. He realizes that there's a janitor inside, becomes convinced the janitor was kind of perving on them, spying, gets out and goes in to beat off the janitor, and she's left out there in like freezing cold, slowly. He has the keys. She's going to freeze to death if she's out there. She's to go into the school to try to find him. She's worried about him, and that's when the book takes more of a horror turn. It becomes like a cat and mouse game. She thinks something's happened to the boyfriend. She sees the janitor. The janitor is the danger. This man coming towards her. And it's like her hiding from him. And it's got this whole kind of horror chase scene element to it, which is really, really, really well written in the book. Really like well paced, like thrilling bit of the book, which they just completely took out of the movie, which I found really disappointing. In fact, they replaced it with a ballet. The ballet dancers do a wonderful job, and it's very beautiful to watch. It's a very beautifully filmed movie. But I don't understand why you would take this really fun horror thriller scene and then be like, I know ballet dancers. They kind of like act out the boyfriend and girlfriend's possible, like, I don't know. It disappointed me. It's in the chase that you come to realize that the janitor, the boyfriend, and the girlfriend are all the same person, and that they are coming to the end of this imagined scenario and coming to the point of committing suicide, which is what the staff members have been talking about throughout the book. In the movie, she talks directly with the janitor. She isn't making much sense. She's saying things that contradict previous points of information, and it becomes clear at that point that she isn't a real individual. In the book, the discussion is more to do with the act of ending things, because that's the whole point of the title. I'm thinking of ending things doesn't refer to this imagined relationship. It refers to the individual's suicide. So at the end of the novel, the janitor / Jake, the boyfriend, they meet their demise with a very, very final violent act, and it's very clearly spelled out for you. What the janitor does is he encourages him and Jake sort of talk, and then they realize, like they're coming to the end of their scenario, and they know that they're coming to the end now of what they were sort of a prolonged suicide note almost with this imagined scenario. And the janitor basically untwists a metal hanger and gives it to Jake and is like, right, well, and Jake stabs himself in the neck, which is of course the janitor stabbing himself in the neck, and he commits suicide very, very clearly, straight in the neck. And that's the whole point, the whole title of the book. I'm thinking of ending things, and he does. And then that is when you realise and understand everything the staff members have been saying throughout the book about this awful thing that happened. Did you know him? Why did he do that? Oh, he always kept himself to himself. You understand what they're talking about. They're talking about finding the janitor's body. They're talking about the suicide. And the fact that they read his kind of journal, which played out this imagined scenario that he has that we have been privy to. The movie, what happens is the janitor, Jake and the girlfriend kind of just disappear, and the janitor gets into the car, and then he gets hypothermia from being in the car in the snow, takes off all his clothes, then he gets visited by like a cartoon pig. Yeah, it's as weird as it sounds, and they have like him playing out slightly more imagined scenarios with, for example, Jake receiving like a Nobel Prize type thing for his life achievement. Obviously him feeling like he didn't achieve anything in his life. And it has a sort of more sweet, hopeful sort of vibe to the ending. I mean, it makes very little sense. You're watching it and you're like, what is happening here? Obviously it's this sort of hallucinations that he's suffering as a result of his hypothermia, but it's supposed to give you like a kind of a hopeful vibe to it. Like he's not really dying. He's just going on to other things. But the most important part for me is the fact that he didn't kill himself. He didn't end things. I'm thinking of ending things. I'm thinking of killing myself. But he doesn't in the book. Or he does in the book, but he doesn't in the movie. In the movie, he gets hypothermia. It's like the title doesn't even make sense anymore. And that really annoyed me. Like, they should have just had him commit suicide. I don't know why they made that decision. I guess they felt maybe that it was too fucking horrible an ending from the book, because it is a pretty awful ending. You know, he does kill himself and he does it in a very horrible way. But that's the entire point of the book. The whole point of the book is that exploration of loneliness and regret and the impact that that can have on an individual when they're at their lowest point. That's the whole point. So I felt like they lost that message completely with the movie, and I found that really disappointing. I think overall, personally for me, the adaptation didn't work. As a standalone piece, it is a very beautifully shot and directed piece of indie film. The acting is absolutely phenomenal. The actors and actresses are incredible, and they are really like it's just this beautiful dreamlike quality, but it's very much an art house type movie, so you have to be into that kind of thing. And as a standalone film, I enjoyed it. The title doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's okay. It's all right. But the book, a million times better. The book is a quick read, so I genuinely recommend that you buy it. It is a thoroughly unsettling and unnerving book to read, with a great sudden divergence from the story as it's perceived to be as it's plodding along. It suddenly becomes this thriller horror book, and then that's when you get hit with this tragic ending with this lonely man killing himself, and it's very impactful and it's beautifully written. So yeah, I think that the movie director Reid did some very cute is that's a horribly patronizing word. I don't mean cute. I think he made some really nice homages to the book. The way that the girlfriend presents poetry as her own, which is then revealed to be an author's when she finds the author's book in the movie. When she presents photographs as being her photographs, but then you see posters of those photographs and see clearly that she never took those pictures. They're letting you know that she doesn't exist, basically. So that I thought that was quite cleverly done. There's a part where she plays this scene from one of his favorite film noir movies, and it's really, really well done. But yeah, it just wasn't as impactful for me as the book, and I took out the parts of the book that I liked the best, which was that unsettling, creepy nature of it, and that hard ending. So yeah, it's a bit of a miss for me personally. What do you guys think? Have you read the book? Have you watched the Netflix adaptation? One, both? Let me know in the comments what you think. I always love to hear your opinions, whether you agree with me or not. I like having nerdy book and movie discussions with you guys. But that's it for now. If you could subscribe to my channel, I would love you forever. Don't forget to hit the bell button so you never miss out on this fantastic content and my lovely face. And leave me comments, likes. Love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.